Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to go back through some of my recent videos on the GH6, which we're filming with right now, and really look at what you guys have been saying about this camera, questions and misconceptions that I may have seen in the comments, and just see what everyone's got to say. So let's do it. All right, I'm just going down the line here. First comment. I can't remember which video this is on, but it says for the streaking, so just buy the GH5S instead. Oh, I think it was on the missing features video, but whatever. I'm not really sure I understand that. I think the GH6 and the GH5S are totally different cameras with different use cases. The IBIS is the biggest difference. So yeah, I think he's talking about the streaking and some of the other little issues with the GH6, which I'm sure will be ironed out and are not really a big deal. But yeah, if you have any reservations about the price of the GH6 or the streaking or anything like that, GH5 Mark II, GH5S are still really great whether you need IBIS or not. So yeah, so this is on my DR Boost fix video. Red Frame Tech, definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Link. Just like you, I prefer having DR Boost on, so having an auto setting would solve the problem for me. Let's spam Sean at Lumix Live. Yeah, that's my whole point with the DR Boost video was like, I want to use this as much as possible. Let's make it as easy as possible to use in as many situations as possible. So yeah, everybody message Panasonic, we'll get this thing fixed. And this is a good comment. So he says, I added DR Boost to one of my FN buttons, beats hunting through the menus. That's what I do too. I think I have it on the left or the right on the circle thumb pad thing. It's a decent workaround to just X out of the menus, pop it on or off, and go back. But one, it is slower than just a quick override right in the menu. And two, it takes up one of those function buttons, which could be assigned to something else. You know, I have left and right as E stabilization on one side and DR Boost on the other, but I really wish that like the volume for the audio inputs could be on one of them, but got to be a DR Boost. Next one. We've got, I don't understand how MFG can put a product on the market with this kind of problem. So yeah, this is about the streaking issue again. And yeah, the only time you're going to see this is like 4.5 stops overexposed, like 4.5 stops underexposed on the other side, and then like raising the exposure and the shadows and stuff like that. So, and the geometric shapes like windows and stuff make it really difficult as well. So yeah, if that's like the situations you're working in, definitely avoid this camera. It's a little bit worse than average, but still totally usable. So moving on. Another similar question. I can't understand why I need to apply noise reduction on a $2,200 camera. Well, the camera's usually a lot cheaper, more like the $1,600 to $2,000 range, which is another whole thing. But yeah, why would you need to apply noise reduction in a $2,200 camera? Well, you could turn up noise reduction in the camera. You also could leave it off, but I think the larger point here is almost every camera has noise, especially cinema cameras, you know. I bet an ARRI Alexas and Reds and, you know, I mean, look at the Blackmagic 12K, amazing camera, super high resolution. It's probably significantly worse in low light than the GH6. So why would I need to apply noise reduction on a $2,200 camera? Cameras are good and bad or better and worse at different things. And yeah, not every $2,000 camera is going to have perfect noise correction and zero noise at every setting. No camera will have zero noise at any setting. Even the base ISO has noise. So yep, that's why. So this guy, he says, I'm not sure what your case is here. The GH6 is far superior and better than the GH5 or G9. It's not even a competition. It's an amazing camera. My only complaint is about the autofocus because it just doesn't work. Which I had a personal quarrel with all those things because the GH5 and the G9 are still very good cameras and do have some benefits over the GH6. But, you know, I hear you. And the autofocus is, again, totally fine for most people doing most things. But I digress. He goes on to say the GH6's autofocus is the best, but it's not the best compared to Sony and Canon. But yeah, I mean, people who use Panasonic aren't going for, you know, people who need autofocus aren't going for Panasonic. So yeah, And to extend my further comment from before, to compare a 2022 camera like the GH6 to an already old camera like the G9 doesn't make sense. It's totally comparable, you know. Cameras have been extremely good for a really long time, and we're really just like plateauing a little bit with cameras, you know. Going from standard def to 1080p was like massive. Going from 1080p to 4K was like pretty big. Going from 4K to 6K or 8K, we're just not there yet. And even if we do get there, based on some of these charts, it's all about your distance to the screen and your resolution. I know he's not just talking about resolution, but yeah, long story short, a lot of cameras are amazing, and they've been amazing for a long time. And so, yes, you can easily compare a camera from 2017 to a 2021, 2022 camera pretty easily, because they're both going to be great. Finally pulled the trigger and bought a GH6 on Cyber Monday. Today I returned it. I watched the video like this. I wonder if I got an extremely defective model. After a few days of filming tests and a day of documented shooting, the streaking problem is a real deal breaker. Oh, there's a read more, but I can't see it. I actually talked to this guy a little bit, and I really wonder, I need to find a follow-up, and I might edit this in now. Yeah, I really do wonder if the streaking is better or worse on certain cameras and certain modes, like certain copies of the GH6, because I really don't see it that much at all. And I've shot in like clubs. I've shot noir feature film, which is very high-key contrast lighting, bright points of light, and it's really only ever affected maybe half a dozen times with all these weddings and crazy lighting situations. So I really wonder if there's some, disparity in how prevalent the streaking is based on your particular copy of the camera. So I might have to go and rent a couple and see if I can figure this thing out. Hey, Rhett, thanks for that video. One basic question I have, I can't find the answer to, is this: what is the base ISO? Also, by the way, 20 megapixels to 25 is a 25% increase. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I got my math a little bit wrong. But yes, so Panasonic is a little bit coy with their information. Sometimes they've said base and native ISO is the same thing. Sometimes they say it's different. And I assume they say it's different for things like the dual gain sensor in the GH5S or the dual output sensor like in the GH6. But long story short, you're going to get your best performance at 100 in standard profiles in photography, or 800 in standard profiles, which is with the DR boost on. In Vlog, it goes up to 250 DR boost off and 2000 with DR boost on, which I know people complain that DR boost is too high to film a lot of things with, but 2000 might be too high if you don't have the indies or whatever, but 250 is, or 100 in standard, is lower than on the GH5 or the GH5S, or even the S5, which is 640. So yes, well, DR boost on 2800 is pretty high, 100 or 250 with it off is pretty low. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but a little silver lining for you there. I feel Sony had the GH6 and Blackmagic 6K in mind when it launched the FX30. I wonder how it would compare. Yeah, I've seen some similar comparisons. I mean, it's a bigger sensor, a little bit better dynamic range, has autofocus and things like that, but the stabilization seems terrible in the FX30 compared to the GH6, or compared to most things. And yeah, it's interesting comparisons, but GH6 does photos, it does video, and it does cinematography, and the FX30 only does cinematography super well. So I picked the GH6. I also just like not having to own a Sony. I don't agree that dynamic boost shows more noise. My testing shows dynamic boost improves the noise performance. So I asked if he was talking about 250 or 2000, or 2000 DR boost on, 2000 DR boost off. Because if it's the latter, I agree. DR boost on does help with noise a little bit, does help with some of this stuff. But when you compare 250 to 2000, 250 is definitely cleaner. 2000 is a little bit noisy, but not that bad, and it's worth the trade-off for me for most things. So he talks a lot about Sony and marketing and stuff like that, but the main point he's making is that the GH5 Mark II is still a very good choice and a better choice for this individual, and I tend to agree. If you are starting to think you might need the GH6, no matter what camera you're coming from, really look into getting the GH5 Mark II, because it's 75, 80, 90% of the camera the GH6 is, but smaller, better battery life, and a lot cheaper. So if you're thinking about the GH6, maybe consider GH5 Mark II. So this is a question I get a lot. What's better to buy, a GH6 or an S5? And now we've got the S5 Mark II, which complicates things even a little bit further. So first off, if you want the best autofocus, S5 Mark II for sure. If you want S5 or GH6, S5 has better low light. It's got better image quality and dynamic range. The GH6 has everything else: unlimited recording, higher resolution, higher frame rates, no crops, more video tools, and all that kind of stuff. But in general, get whatever you get the lenses for. Question: do any of these streaking issues affect stills made with the GH6? And if so, what operation setting should be used to minimize it? Yeah, it actually does show up in the stills mode. I've seen it in some super low light situations where I've had to like raise up the shadows even past like 12,800. And even then it was super slight. The real most time I notice it is in vlog for sure. So if you're using raw photos and shooting under like 8,000 ISO or 10,000 ISO most of the time, you're rarely, if ever, I've seen it in one photo situation I've been in. So while extremely rare, it is technically possible to get streaking in stills. Moving on, I only noticed the streaking once before the update, but after updating, I've not noticed it at all. Great video, thanks for the info. Yeah, that's the thing. Some people get the streaking a lot, and some people don't get it that much at all, which I wonder, first off, like before, is the streaking different from model to model? Could it be worse on some and better on others? I really need to get my hands on a couple more GH6s and test that out, let me know if you guys want to see that video where I get like 3 GH6s together and test the streaking. The other thing is, yeah, most people don't notice the streaking. Some people shoot in situations where and are a little bit more pixel peepy and they'll notice it all the time. But I do really think that even if it is the same on every camera, that most people, if they weren't told about it, would have taken a lot longer to realize it was there and may never have realized it. This is about the streaking as well. This camera is an absolute no-go for me. And yeah, I don't want to downplay the streaking because it's a little unfortunate. It's real. And if you do stuff or are nervous at all about the streaking issue, wait a little bit of time to see if firmware can improve it. Get the S5 or the S5 Mark II, or stick with the GH5 Mark II like we talked about, or the GH5S. You don't need the GH6 for almost anything that the GH5 Mark II can't do. So if you're worried, don't get it, and don't let me convince you to get it, or another YouTuber or someone convince you not to get it. Make up your own decision and ask anything. I'll try to answer it in the comments down below. Follow up. I had one photo that was ruined the other day when I did a hyper backlit, sun literally right behind the bride's head thing in the literal Mojave Desert, and the purple streak hit her face in such a way that it looks like she had a mustache. 70,309 shots with the GH6, and that is the first one I feel bad about, making it a 0.000014% photography tragedy rate. I can live with that. So, yeah, this kind of, I honestly don't know how else better to describe it. I've had it mess up one photo as well. I've had it mess up maybe 3 clips, 5 clips, 6 clips, something like that. Super like sub 1% failure rate when it comes to the streaking for what I do. Again, your experience may vary, your mileage may vary, but that's me. Okay. This is one, I don't take this one personally, but let's get into it. I don't like when YouTubers make excuses for a product defects and try to give workarounds. It's not the job of a reviewer, it's the job of the product manufacturer. At the time of buying the product, I don't think the seller of the product would ever accept less money. No excuse for Panasonic. If they want to sell product, they need to make sure it doesn't come with any problems. If there's any issues, they should be ready to fix it at no cost or inconvenience to the customers. And YouTube should stop trying to normalize manufacturers' poor workmanship. I think the GH6 is an amazing camera, revolutionary design, really cool sensor. I cannot wait to see a dual gain sensor in a full frame camera. I mean, can you imagine? Especially if it can still do the dual gain as well. But yeah, I don't want to make excuses for Panasonic. I think this is unfortunate, but I also want to be realistic with how bad it really is, what situations it comes up in. And again, every camera has limitations and issues and bugs and ways to mess it up or it to be, unusable in some situation. And this just happens to be the issue on the GH6. If you have the camera already, you can't return it, whatever. I think it's best to put out the best information and best solutions possible, but they're also not completely wrong. It would be nice if Panasonic was just like, just kidding, we fixed the camera and we threw phase detect autofocus in there for you at the same time. But at the end of the day, not really how it works. There's a couple of comments in this thread, but we'll kind of skip it. Appreciate the video, but it shouldn't be an issue to begin with, or the community's job to find, very similar, or the community's job to find work around and fixes. I'm a GH6 owner, and I think Gerald and co were right to call this out, and we should demand better for our hard-earned cash. That being said, I still feel like they pushed this particular sensor too hard, hence the noise, etc. I recommend this person watch my response to Gerald and Dunn's video. Yeah, it's a little disappointing. It's a slightly annoying issue, but it's super rare like we've seen from multiple other commenters. And, yeah, all you got to do is move the ISO dial up a little bit and down a little bit to, reduce or completely eliminate it. If you don't like it, there's plenty of other cameras, the S5 Mark II, all that stuff we talked about. Moving on. The missing PDAF kills it for me. Why, oh penny boy? Had to read that in Camera Conspiracies. Wasn't Camera Conspiracies who commented, but, that's the penny boy, right? Yeah, I made a video on this, so we'll skip this one. But check out that video on how I feel about phase detect coming so soon after the GH6. Boop. It seemed very strange that the GH6 could do tracking and autofocus up to 120 FPS in video, but only 8 FPS while in stills. Live view sounds interesting. Other missing feature was the pre-burst. And then he's a little disappointed in the lower ISO dynamic range in photo mode and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a little weird, the reduced... Again, I use things in the real world, so I look at these tests as one resource to inform how I see those end results, but I don't see like non-dynamic range boosted footage out of the GH6 and I'm like, oh, what is that? It looks good at any ISO, even the low ISO values, and I don't do those like head-on-head comparisons like scientifically. And so if it looks good, I'm going to use it. I try not to get obsessed about these like specs that much, although I don't want to totally give Panasonic a pass either for the non-dynamic range boost image being kind of neglected because the DR boost on is so good. A few comments left to go here. Couldn't agree more with what you said. Now that with the new shiny S5 II is coming, they've been putting all their resources into that. What's on the horizon for the GH6? A slow death? Or is it the GH6 Mark II? I remember the G9 getting 10-bit capabilities and much better AF. I want that level of treatment for the $2,200 flagship this year. Yeah, I think Panasonic needs to roll out some firmware. They need to fix the HDMI issue. They need to fix and improve the streaking issue if possible. They need to fix little tiny things like the one area plus being like huge increments and just little things like that that are kind of still little issues with the camera that need to be resolved. I'm really hoping that the money coming in from the S5 Mark II shows Panasonic the right direction to go in the future, but also gives them a few more R&D and software development bucks to improve this amazing GH6, which with just a few little tweaks could be a legendary camera on the same level as like a GH5 or something like that. Thanks, Rhett. My issue is that by the time writing to SSD came out and I could use it the way that I really wanted to, the GH6, they had just dropped the price $500. And now, of course, the new autofocus is coming to the new camera. So we missed that boat as well. Feeling a bit screwed by all this. So yeah, this is another topic I covered in that response video to the S5 Mark II. And I feel this guy's pain. You know, do I wish the GH6 had phase detect? Yes, but then it would have been delayed another 11 months after it was already like a year or two past due. I think it holds its own. It's still super relevant, and I don't really need phase detect that much, although I'm gonna get it. I want it, but I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. I've never needed it, but it's gonna make my life easier on like 20% of my shoots. So yeah, don't feel bad about your purchases. Don't regret anything. You can use the camera how you wanted to, how you thought it was gonna go down, and that hasn't changed despite all these new cameras coming out. So check out that video I posted earlier and really try to, you know, be okay with your purchase decision, because you were right at the time and you're right now, even if you feel like one or two things might have been left out of the camera. Hi, MFT and L-mount S5 shooter here. Well, in my honest opinion, the GH6 feels like a half-baked cookie or brownie with some ingredients missing. The S5 II seems a well-accomplished, well-done camera with every single option available right out of the box. Although there is the X coming out. That's nice comment. But the GH6, you waited forever for a firmware to release for the SSD, raw compatibility, different flavors of ProRes, and on the other side, the S5 II got it. Except for 120p FPS 4K, faster readout, blah, 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 blah. They probably needed to release the GH6 too fast. Anyway, thanks for your work. Yeah, again, it's in the same comment, in the same vein as those other comments, where it's like, the GH6 still is great. The S5 II is great in a lot of ways, but there's very little overlap, you know? Full sensor readout, the S5 II caps out at 30 frames per second. The GH6 natively records 120 frames a second on the sensor. No crop. 6K 30, 6K 60, 4K 30, 4K 120, 1080p 120, 1080p 300, you know. But the S5 II's got the autofocus and the low light and all that stuff. So in my opinion, you're just getting more options. You're getting more technology. Panasonic's back in the game. And the better you do, hopefully the more firmware updates and the more love and attention we'll see to Micro Four Thirds, existing cameras, future cameras, as well as the S series and everything like that. But with that, that's actually the last comment I had that I had anything to say about, really. And I responded to all those guys in the comments, but I just wanted to do this, answer some questions people are having about the GH6 that I might not have answered in other videos, and all that kind of stuff. So if you guys like these comment reading videos, if you had a good time, leave a comment of your own down below. Maybe the comments in this video can go into the next video of comments. And again, thank you everybody for commenting, liking, subscribing all my videos over the last couple of years. It's been really fun. And yeah, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the comment section of the next video. Well, and this video technically, like it's gonna be in the comments on this video, but it's gonna be read out loud to people in the next video, so it's probably gonna get seen a little bit more. But I also was wondering, like, how does this work exactly? Because, like, can you show people's usernames on YouTube if it's on your video? Like, do they have privacy? Do you own their comments because, like, they commented in a public